there, ballers, and welcome back to the mean streets of Los Angeles, as it's said regularly on the radio in the game. LA Noire, not quite done yet. I think we're approaching a sort of late game point, as the story has sort of morphed, is what I would say, into a big overarching culmination is what's going on now. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of it as much than just being a cop. Isn't that always the way? It's happened to me a few times where you're playing a game like a detective game, and you're solving like interesting crimes, then occasionally maybe there's a slightly weaker one, and then there's a really cool one, and I just like really enjoy that. And now it's coming to like all this big overarching culmination, which sounds great, but it's the individual cases are more in service of that story than really being super interesting cases on their own. I'll explain more in detail. So I came to the end of the homicide questline, which was really cool. We found it had a really kind of intentionally dissatisfying ending, which I kind of like. It's bold to do that because you want the player to be like, yeah, got it, and then they go, no, because reality's often different, and that's how they played it here. The main point was we found more and more that the people we'd locked up for various murders were not the actual guilty ones. We did know that. We sensed that as we were playing through the game itself. Is like, it just doesn't quite add up. The evidence that we found was all so neat and pretty and stupid, right? Like they kept their murder weapon by their bed along with their dirty overalls and things like that. And you're like, oh, what a nice, neat little package this is. No attempt has been made to conceal the fact that they butchered somebody in any way, shape, or form. But it was in service of sort of drawing in these other people that we talked about yesterday. So the theory was, who done it? Now, I made a fateful error here, and it very much reminded me of Final Fantasy XIV's Shadowbringers story, which I won't spoil here, because those who know, as to who a certain character is that is presented to you at the beginning of the Shadowbringers storyline, and there's quite an on-running mystery around that character as to who they actually are. And I remember distinctly on the first day of Shadowbringers going, oh, it's probably this person. Because that would make logical sense immediately to anyone. But as the story played out, it seemed like so many red herrings were being thrown at you that you started having more and more wild ideas. In terms of LA Noire, there was a brief mention on one of the cases of a temporary barman, and we had met this temporary barman. And I went, oh, it's the temporary barman who's the serial killer. That makes total sense. He gets to hang out in various bars. He's never really in the same place for too long. He gets to see who gets really drunk, and then he gets to stalk them and kill them. That all fits really, really nicely. And it was him. It was him. So why was I so chatty about the captain yesterday and how he could, the captain of the police force, and how he could have tied into all this process? Well, for a simple fact is that I'm a moron. One of the cases, which involved a market where they were hiding things in the fruit sales. I mistakenly took the guy there as being that temporary barman. I was like, oh, there's the temporary barman. And it wasn't. It was a totally different guy. And completely, I'd just forgotten you see the temporary barman in like case 1. So this is like case 7, many, many hours later. I couldn't remember exactly who the person looked like because you encounter a bunch of people. So I dismissed it at that point. It was him. And when he came back on screen for the big final showdown, I was like, who is that guy? Because in my brain, I'd already dismissed the temporary barman. It's like, it's the temporary barman. I was like, I did call that. Like, that was like I don't know if Bex can find the clip, because probably not. It's in, I think 22 hours of footage right now. But I remember distinctly calling it out and then dismissing it later on. But it was the temporary barman. That made sense. It fit. It was the puzzle piece that fit the puzzle. But because of this, we get promoted. And I was really wondering, what is higher than homicide? You would think, at least in my mind, homicide is like the top levels of detectives working with that. But there is a level above that. And I really, really love how they're setting this up. This is the emergence of the problem, the war on drugs, essentially. We're moving to Vice, which is a burgeoning and becoming much more problematic during this era, as we know where it leads. Obviously, we've been around. So this is like the real... Drugs have always been around, but now it's like starting to blossom and engulf all the murders. This is why it's above homicide. A lot of the murders that are happening now are actually tied directly to the drug trade, particularly with the amount of morphine is the main focus of our story from the people returning from the World War. Have managed to secure themselves an entire shipment of morphine syrettes, little syringes, that they used on the battlefield for when people were just immediately getting ripped to pieces, are in absolute abject pain. You jab them with the morphine and they're immediately relieved of their pain, whether they're going to die or whatever. You could just stick it in really quickly and that's it. That person would be somewhat absolved of their pain. A little bit of relief, depending on what the outcome's going to be, doesn't matter. It's just a case of getting that pain away as quickly as humanly possible. So an entire shipment has come in. So now we're dealing with the drug trade. And we're working the way a lot of police officers do. We're starting with street level, and we're following the money, essentially. We're following the money, we're following the orders, how are they getting it? So we start off with a couple of guys who have overdosed. They're dead. But they've clearly been getting their drugs from this like popcorn stand where they were sellotaping the morphine to the bottom, and then you follow that back to where does he get it from, and so on and so forth. A lot of interesting characters going along here. Particularly highlights here, we're going to a soup can factory. So what was happening is the drugs, these things were coming in from like Tijuana and getting dropped in, and then they were putting them, they had a private operation at a soup canning facility where they were putting a lot of the drugs into the soups and then delivering that to the markets as soups, and then people coming in and buying the soup, and the cans are filled with drugs. That was weed that they were dealing, weed coming in from Tijuana. But it eventually all ties in together to the morphine thing, which then ties us to all the newspapers that we've been finding, where we get the bigger overall story of what's going on, is that this officer, and I always forget his name. Anyway, this young officer who really cares about his fellow soldiers and the fact that they've got post-traumatic stress disorder, right? They're really struggling. And the story is he really wants to help them, and he's visited this therapist, Fontaine, who is a psychopath. Like, whatever his grand plan is hasn't come to fruition yet. We don't know, but he's a maniac. He's definitely up to no good. And trying to get this therapist to help with his war buddies, which is going badly. Like, Fontaine is convincing them to, like, set fire to houses and things like that to expunge their dark urges, so to speak, even if there may accidentally be people inside, which they've now burned alive and has made things even worse. But our war hero just realized there's a shipment of morphine and convinced his army buddies to steal it. With good intentions. That's the interesting thing. With good intentions. And the idea was that they would have all this morphine and they would sell it to medical professionals in order to get some money so that they could have something when they got home, because these army vets have returned and they've just been sort of left out to dry, right? The age-old story is they've returned from war and just get on with your life again. Go from the horrors that you've seen, of countless death, your friends being blown apart, you having to kill a bunch of people, and now just like go shopping in Walmart or whatever, right? It's just not worked at all. So he's convinced some of his army buddies to steal this morphine. They're going to be able to sell it to medical professionals and make some money, have a little nest egg so they can maybe live a reasonable life. That hasn't worked, obviously. These drugs are now been distributed onto the streets. People are dying. People are overdosing. The cartels, I'd say cartels, but the drug runners of the early 1940s have got hold of lots of it and are now flooding the streets. And so these army vets try and pull out. And the main feature of this is a guy called Mickey C. Mickey C is the guy in charge. A lot of names get thrown around in this storyline, but Mickey C is the face of who we deal with. Where they tell him, like, we're not doing this anymore. Don't come after us. We're trained soldiers. If you try and come after us, it's going to end badly. We're just telling you there's going to be no more morphine. So obviously Mickey C is not exactly happy about this because he's making a lot of profit. As you can see, the police, LA Noire is currently going past our office here. So we're tracking this down and we make the big bust. We actually get into the factory where they're housing all the morphine, and we track down the supplier through this ice company, the Polar Bear Ice Company, that is putting all the morphine into ice cubes and then delivering it to various outlets and putting it in their freezer so they have all the morphine. So we make the big bust. Now, it's descending a bit more, which is interesting. Like, the overall story, this culmination I'm talking about, I don't always get the impression I'm not into, because I am. Like, it's really kind of cool, because corruption is rife in the police department. And Phelps, our protagonist, is very by the book, doesn't like it. And we've now been partnered up with Roy. Roy, we meet at the beginning of the game and in the middle of the game very briefly, but every time we interact with Roy, he's just an absolute awful human being. He's slapping women, he's clearly corrupt. And Roy has requested us specifically. So the initial vibe is this is a guy who keep your enemies close, right? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer kind of angle. He wants to keep an eye on us. He wants to be close to what's going on. And he probably also believes that given our track history at this point, we could probably advance his career, as he does try and take credit for a bunch of stuff that we're doing, even though he's not taking any active role in it, right? He's along for the ride, but he's not the one solving it. So he wants to ride our coattails and also keep a very close, watchful eye on our actions. That's the vibe, which is cool. That's really cool. The main focus of this is a boxing match that was rigged. There was a rigged boxing match that everybody in the police department who was on the take and a lot of gangsters all knew that this English boxer was going to take a dive. And he doesn't. He doesn't want to do that. And you do meet the boxer, and he's like, I still have fight in me. I'm not ready to give it up yet. And they start hunting him down. And Phelps is like, why are we hunting this guy for winning the boxing match? Like, and that the clear interest is everybody lost money on this who's aware of the fraud that was going on. And they want their money back. They want to punish him for it. Phelps doesn't really get it. He's like, wait, well, why? I don't understand. Which ends with the showdown where Phelps lets him go. Much to the anger of Roy and Mickey C and all these people are not happy that Phelps is not getting it. This is not how this game is played. And when we regularly bust the street vendors of drugs, they're clearly saying, it's like, we give you money. We're part of a protection racket. We pay our dues to the police to turn a blind eye to what we're doing. And Phelps is disrupting that whole thing. Where is this going? So that's where we're up to. Where is it going? I don't know. I'm hoping in one way that the story will be Phelps sort of brings down this corruption. But I don't think that's going to happen. Because as I said earlier, there was a dissatisfying ending to the serial killer story. In that the temp barman is the half-brother of a famous politician. Apparently this ties into real life, by the way. Somebody was pointing out, like, yeah, this is very similar to what actually happened during the time. Is they kind of just say, forget about it, we'll deal with it. It's no longer your problem. Which the implication there is like, this guy is not going to prison for this. They're just going to let it go. They do say, which bothered me, is that the people who have been convicted of the murders, which they didn't do, will be released. Not innocent. But they'll lose evidence. They'll find something wrong with the case to get them out of there. So those guys will live with the stigma of killing their wives, even though they absolutely didn't, for the rest of their lives. But they won't go to prison. But in terms of the actual killer, you're not going to get the prosecution that you're after. In fact, it's none of your business anymore. And I kind of feel like it's going this way. I do wonder if they're just going to kill Phelps at the end of it, because he's too... There's almost a hot... You guys ever see Hot Fuzz? I hope so. It's great. It's a British movie, but it's very, very good. Where if you'd not seen it, it's worth watching probably on YouTube, the first 5 minutes of Hot Fuzz. And the whole point of it is he's too good at his job, and they get rid of him from the London police force. It's very, very comedic how it's done. But it feels like that. Phelps is too good at what he's doing. And that's not okay, because these guys are all... there's a big line where it's like, yeah, well, this boxer just cost half the department their holiday this year, their vacation. And that's a bigger deal to them, because they were all on the take. They're all skimming off the top. They're all taking some extra cream from the buffet. And now Phelps is ruining that for them. And he's probably not okay with it. So I'm looking forward to it. The only disappointment I've had is the individual cases aren't as engaging as the other cases we've done. Like, those self-contained stories were very, very good. Sometimes they were very dark. Sometimes they're a little comedic. That's my issue so far, is at this stage of the game, is the stuff with the drugs is only service of the next bit of this overarching story, rather than it being much more self-contained and having some sort of roundup here. I preferred that, I think, but maybe the big story is going to pay off for us in a way that makes it worth it. A bit of both would have been nice. Like the serial killer thing, I think was the best so far because those were self-contained stories, but you also had in the back of your mind is like, this isn't adding up quite correctly. But the actual individual cases were as good themselves, and that was great. So we'll see where that goes. Holla ballers, and welcome to the grand finale of L.A. Noire. This ranks, I think, pretty easily in the top. It might even be number one. I have the most bitter endings to a video game, and it's brave and it's bold, and it is a crime, an absolute crime that this game does not have a sequel to it, or that this isn't a franchise of its own with just L.A. Noire 2 taking place in a totally different part of the world, totally different characters, just using the same storytelling technique. What an absolute nightmare. I think I mentioned it in a previous video, but if I didn't, Team Bondi, who made this, Rockstar published it, but Team Bondi made it, actually went out of business like 3 months after this game came out, despite its overwhelming success. Just massive financial problems and just issues that arose, poor management of the company. Whatever you want to say is they made this monolithic game and then just completely crapped the bed the second it finally got released. Even though it was massively successful and sold millions and millions of copies, they just went off the rails and nothing has ever been seen or heard since. Various discussions about whether they'd make it again. But of course, Grand Theft Auto 6, right? Grand Theft Auto 6 is on the horizon. So that's where their attention is. I really hope with every fiber of my being that after such a colossal undertaking as Grand Theft Auto 6 obviously is, we're not blind to just how much work and effort has been put into what we'll eventually get with Grand Theft Auto 6, is that they kind of want to take a step back and make something a little simpler, like they did with Bully and like they did here with L.A. Noire. It's obviously not on the scale of what the Grand Theft Auto games became, but it's just so good. It's so good. So what happened? Essentially, after I really learned to hate Cole Phelps, the change of character they did with him was very well played, because you go from this guy that you kind of feel bad for, right? He's not the greatest. I don't think I particularly liked him at the start because he's such a stickler for the rules. He's really by the book and almost feels, in a weird way, incorruptible. And that's what he's surrounded by. He's surrounded by corruption. He's surrounded by people who are pulling him in all directions. Jaded cops, his partners in particular, are all bitter and twisted in some way. They've got flaws, you've got Rusty, who just doesn't understand why you don't just beat your wife to get her under control like she's some sort of pet, to Roy, who is obviously just up to his knees in corruption, and he casually brings up that half the police force is in on this. They get their paychecks, but most of their money is based on finding out who fixes fight, taking backhands from drug dealers to turn a blind eye. And obviously Roy is heavily in bed with the top government politicians to make things go away. That's his job. And you have Cole Phelps, who is seemingly this, incorruptible source, but he's not, he's human. And that's why this works. I think if this was written in a less delicate way, this would come across as a stupid plot twist for the sake of contrivance, almost, but it doesn't come across that way. You just know that nobody's perfect, and Cole Phelps is far from perfect, far from perfect. And the beginning of his downfall is temptation. The temptation, and it could be the stress of the job, the fact he's surrounded by all these things, whatever, but ultimately he cheats on his wife. He falls head over heels in love with Elsa, this singer, a local lounge bar, and he goes to her, and he has this point in front of her door as he goes there, where he's second guessing himself. Should I knock on this door? And I was begging. I don't know if Bex can play the clip here. I was begging. I was pleading. Just go home and jerk off. For the love of God, go home and jerk off. Phelps. Phelps. Phelps, you've got a fictional wife and kids at home. Oh, don't get greasy now, Phelps. Oh, shit. He's got his swagger walk on. Look at the shoulders going. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just go home and jerk off, dude. Just go home and... Don't do it. Go home, jerk off. Go home, jerk off. He did it. Busted. Go home and jerk off. Just don't do it. And he does. And in she goes. And Roy is following him. As we said, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, which is the whole point of why Roy requested him as a partner, because he knew there was be something. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's that squeaky clean. And there he sees it. And immediately we get through the stories told in the newspapers that Roy has immediately gone to like the mayor and all these officials to say, we have a fall guy. He's put all these criminals away, but adultery is a crime, and we can lay all the media attention on him. In a very Epstein fashion, actually, is like, here's the distraction we need. And that distraction is the overall arcing criminality of the game, is that there's a freeway coming, property values are about to surge, so what's happened is all these top major players in construction and the police force and everything else have got all this land while it's cheap because they know what's coming, and are basically building fake homes on there, and they're getting GIs who are returning from the war to pay for them and burning them down to just claim on insurance. They're all in on it, and they know this value is going to skyrocket, and they'll be able to claim massive amounts of money at the back end for these properties, and all these war vets are just not going to have homes, and screw you, essentially is what's going on. And obviously Phelps is ex-army and feels for them, as are a lot of the people involved in the game. But as we see this downfall of Cole Phelps, it gets worse, because we lean back onto Jack Kelso. And very early in the game, Jack Kelso, who was part of his military unit, was somebody that Phelps really just disliked. And as Phelps had some sort of authority there and had to rank the other soldiers, he ranked Kelso as bottom tier. But Kelso is a good man, a really good man. And Phelps needs his help, because Kelso has now become an insurance investigator. And because he's a good man, he's not going to stand for this level of corruption either. And here's where it gets really, really bad. Is because Cole is actually a coward, which we find out later. He's actually a coward when he's very brave and upfront when it's dealing with strangers and criminals. But when it's dealing with emotional baggage in his own life, including his wife, which is why he just gives up on them and moves in with Elsa, he will run and hide from it as much as humanly possible. And he refuses to go and talk to Kelso because he doesn't like me, essentially. We're not friends. And in doing, as Elsa has an insurance claim coming in for like £20,000, which I think via inflation is like 300k. And instead of having the fucking balls to go to this guy and say, I know we're not friends, but this shit's going down and, you know, we should work together on this, or you need to look into this, like, you know, a man would do. Sorry to be so caveman about this, but like a grown-up would do. Instead, he gets his girlfriend to do it and say, don't take that insurance. You need to go and see Jack Kelso and put him onto the track of this thing. And she's like, why aren't you doing it? And it's like, he hates me. You need to refuse all this money, which he's entitled to, and also go and deal with this for me, because I can't do that. And she does. And this puts Jack in a situation where he's going to be killed. Because he is chasing this lead down. It is sus. It is chasing it down, and he's going to get killed because people are now hunting him. They're begging him they're telling him, they're warning him, like, get out of this or you're going to die. But he can't, and that's what Cole knew would happen. And his shout here to Elsa's character, who's the most mature of the lot, is like, you need to be telling him what's going on. You need to get over this and deal with it. Instead, what we see from Cole is jealousy that she's spending time with Jack. And I think it's implied that she finds Jack a far better man than Cole. Because I know for me, if my partner showed this level of cowardice, you felt was like a strong, independent person, right? If my wife is extremely strong and independent, and if she was like suddenly really cowardly about something, I would find that repulsive. I would. And I think that happens with Elsa. She's like, this guy's a better guy. She finds him more attractive because this Cole has shown a side of himself, which is, I think repulsive is the correct word to go with it. So all this is intermingling, but essentially at this point, the writers know you're not going to be probably on board with Phelps. Some people will be, but you essentially play Jack for the remainder of the game, which is great because they're like, okay, we've kind of soured you on this guy, but we're going to actually change you over to playing this guy, which fits more the mold you've been playing earlier in the game. And we go on our various ways. This is horrifically dark, by the way. Really dark. I'm not going to go into details, but dealing with certain characters is just awful. What they're doing above the law is gross. Really gross. And because you're playing Jack, who's not a police officer, you don't really have the power to do anything about it, which is even worse. You feel powerless. You feel weak and helpless. But as the conclusion of the game goes on, you're wondering how this is going to tie up. And it does tie up. It ties up everything. It's really clever. There are characters that get bumped off unceremoniously and almost off screen. Specifically the evil doctor, Dr. Fontaine, who has been pushing meth onto people, convincing soldiers to burn things, to have people killed. He's been sort of this patsy mastermind. Like, he's very clever, but he's also part of it, while manipulating the very naive soldiers, particularly Sheldon, who is a super naive he's just not very bright, and he's constantly being used by people while trying to do a good thing. And there's nothing worse than somebody who's idealistic and dumb, because you can convince them very easily that this thing is really good for everybody and you should be involved in this. And he's like, okay, let's go. This deal that seems too good to be true must be real. And off he goes, right? I'm not being abused. And he's constantly being abused. The doctor gets killed, but not by Sheldon. He kills Sheldon, but it's actually the pyromaniac that has been burning things down, is looking for the purity of fire. That guy's completely insane. And obviously the doctor thought he could control him. No. There's a really good tie-in here as we get the flashbacks to the war in Japan, that Phelps ordered. There was a really bad incident where Phelps ordered his team, despite the rest of his team saying, we shouldn't be doing this. There's actually more efficient, there's safer ways of dealing with this. They had to clean out some tunnels in the mountain. And they'd been ordered to do it, but the situation had changed. But because Phelps is so by the book, he's like, that was our order to do that. And everybody else is going, right, but the situation has changed now, and there's tanks nearby that would easily just, like, we could just close the caves. Like, we don't need to go in there physically. He's like, nope, we're going to go in there. And he sends one of the flamethrower guys in to start burning the cave out. And while they're approaching it, it is the pyromaniac. So although this guy had a very traumatic past from a childhood, Phelps hasn't helped that by sending this guy in there, because it turns out in the cave was a hospital with women and children who were being treated, and they burned them all. And not only that, they weren't dead yet. So he ordered the team to kill them, to put them out of their misery. So all these soldiers were killing women and children who were on fire and burning and screaming. Obviously massive trauma for the team, and Phelps ordered them to do it because of his idiocy and not being able to adapt to a situation, because he just follows orders like an automaton and gets things done instead of thinking a little bit. So what all these, needless to say, I'm giving you snippets here, but every single character links together in a way that's like, it's dark. But then we get to the actual end of the game as we finally hunt down the remainders of this conglomeration of baddies that have been working against everybody, and chase them into the sewers, which is where they've been holding all the meth, holding all the guns that they've taken. All this illegal contraband is being held down in the sewers. And as we hunt them down to try and stop the flamethrower guy who's completely lost it and kidnapped Elsa, it gets to the final conclusion where Cole and Jack, and they're standing before them. And it's Jack who's not the coward, as Phelps tries to just get Elsa out of there, who says, you guys need to go. You don't need to be here for this. And it's Jack who has to put him down, this soldier, who recognizes he's gone off. He recognizes he's gone off the deep end, and he's saying, I'm still fighting a war. And Jack has to kill him. And the guy accepts his fate. But as Cole leaves, and through circumstance, we end up with Cole being killed in the rushing waters of the sewer as the pipes come together. He gets Elsa out and Jack out, and Cole is washed away and dies and says goodbye. And then we get the really bitter ending I'm talking about. We go to the funeral. His wife is Cole's funeral. Roy is speaking. who has set him all up for this. On the stage are the remaining players who were all a part of the conspiracy that led to this moment. And they're just getting away with it. They're all getting away with it because all the evidence is gone. There's no one left to prosecute. No one else in the police force wants anything to do with it because they're all on the take as well. And it's only Elsa who stands up and says this is a sham. And they just carry on. As she walks out, they just carry on. Cole was a great man. Cole was one of... And you're just looking at that stage of people who all contributed to not only his death, but the death of many civilians and the just ripping off of so many war vets, pushing morphine onto the streets. Like, countless lives have been affected negatively because of these people. And they're just smiling and going along with it and putting on that good face to go with it. And as the credits roll immediately after that, you're like, oh, there has to be more. And there's not. That's the end. That's how it goes. In a very noir fashion. A very noir fashion. But it's ballsy because most devs do want you to have some sort of happy ending. And there is no happy ending here. There is not a glimmer of it. And all I could think of as those credits rolled past my eyes were, God damn it. I just wish there was another one. So we could go down this road again and see what's going on. I don't really want to see any more of these characters again. I think that's a nice bow on this story. I mean, you could always reference things that happened in the past. Maybe one of them went on to being some sort of, you know, a senator or something like that. But God damn, it's a crime there's no more of this. What a phenomenal game. So fun. So fun. But I'm going to leave it there. If you've made it this far, you're probably not going to play it. But I've left out a lot. I really have. I've left out a lot. And there's, I think you can pick this game up for super cheap now. Super cheap. It's well worth it. I played it on PS5, by the way, but it was the PS4 version. Worked totally fine. Just out of interest. The Steam version had issues because I had a Rockstar account issue. And if you've seen the footage, it's fine. Plays perfectly fine. But I'm going to leave it there. LA Noire. So glad we went back and played it. Thank you for listening. New adventure begins. Bye, guys.